What's up, everyone? My name is Alex Distefano. I've been a freelance writer for 20 years, specializing in heavy metal music, cannabis, and comedy. Welcome to this debut episode of my podcast, The Tapes, brought to you exclusively by Blue Beach Studios in Redondo Beach, California. I'm super excited today that my first guest is an absolute radio and comedy legend. I had the pleasure of speaking with the one and only Phil Hendrie, a man of 1,000 voices. Phil's been a talk radio host with a show that broke the barriers and revolutionized comedy. He created a universe of laughs and with so many characters he created. And you can hear them on his podcast, The Phil Hendrie Show. In this episode, we talked about his career in radio. We got to hear the voices of his many iconic characters like Bobby Dooley, R.C. Collins, Margaret Gray, and Herb Sewell, and a few others. We also talked about his recent induction into the Radio Hall of Fame, his influence on comedy and pop culture, and his career in voice acting. He's been in such animated shows as King of the Hill, Futurama, Rick and Morty, and more. He was also in South Park, Team America, The World Police, the movie. And he also had a recent documentary film made about him. It's called Hendrie. It came out last year. And it featured an interview with Rollins, the iconic singer from Black Flag. He's a big fan of Phil's, and he was giving him a lot of mad respect in this film. The film also had comedians like Dana Gould, Judd Apatow, and the writer of Drunk History, Derek Water. They're all huge fans of Phil's work. This was one hell of a conversation, and I hope you enjoy this hilarious episode. Thanks again to Blue Beach Studios. Please search Blue Beach 310 on all platforms. Subscribe to our YouTube and drop us a line. And now I present to you the Hendrie Tapes. All right, welcome to the first episode. We're at Blue Beach Studios in Redondo Beach. My name is Alex Distefano, and today I'm joined by talk radio and a comedy legend, Phil Hendrie. Phil, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you taking the time.
I'm glad to be here, Alex, and I'm sorry for my tardy entrance.
Not a problem at all. We totally understand. I know you're dealing with a lot, so thank you. To begin, as I was saying, I've been a fan of yours for 20 years, since you were on KFI in the late 90s. Mm-hmm. For people that don't know, your talk show really revolutionized talk radio, comedy, and you created a whole new form of like comedy theater. Can you tell me when you first started doing characters in talk radio? And it was like in the 90s, right?
Yeah, it was doing it the way that you heard it on KFI. The first time I did it was at KVEN Radio in Ventura, which was my first full-time talk show. And that was in 1990. It started in the summer of 1990. And I just hit on the idea of, since I'm doing these voices, why don't I just talk to him on a phone? Because I had I'm kind of a production geek. And so I was doing things. I was talking on a phone. I sounded like a phone. And really by accident, because I didn't, I knew I was doing pretty good realistic voices because my idea of good comedy is walking a line of reality. I don't do broad, sketchy stuff. I like to do stuff that it sounds like the guy's real. He may be nuts, but he's real. And I started to get calls. People called in. Right, and I went, okay, this is cool. So, in the grand tradition of improv, you just go with it. And I did. And I realized that I was able to realistically create real characters who could then draw the audience into absurd viewpoints and get phone calls that way, So.
Yeah. Oh, no, definitely. I loved it. And like I said, it was a huge part of my life. And it was just something that even to this day, nobody has done. But since I'm such a huge fan, we're going to go into a little bit of the deep cuts in terms of the characters. But if you could just give a little bit of background of first, we'll start with Bobby Dooley and Steve, your husband.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Bobby Dooley was created when I was driving into KFI one night to my evening shift. I was listening to a radio station that was interviewing people in LA who lived in the Valley. At that time, the Valley part of Los Angeles was considering seceding from the city. And I heard this woman's voice. A lot of times when I hear voices, if I can do them, I do them. If I can mimic a voice. And she was talking like this on the air. And she was saying things like, my husband thinks that this and that, and my husband also thinks. And so in the background, I didn't hear a husband, but in my mind, I could imagine some husband saying, another thing, tell him this,
Yeah.
So she sounded like exactly, and I found myself doing this voice as I walked into the station that night. And I don't know if it was that night or maybe a subsequent night where I went ahead and went on the air with this character. I called her Bobby Dooley. And she did do this thing. She's going like, also, my husband thinks that women shouldn't wear pedal pushers because it shows everything, this kind of shit. But, and he's in the background going, and another thing. So finally, I don't know what night it was, but she just changed the character changed the dynamic. She went, so I just don't think we should wear pedal pushers. Yeah, honey, I don't think it's okay, Steve. I've got it. So he'd be talking in the background and she'd tell him to shut up. And that seemed to work a little better,
Yeah, definitely. And then I love the kind of the duo, but then also I love Margaret Gray and her husband Frank with the whole gender confusion character. Those are hilarious. You kind of like were at the forefront of the whole gender thing because he had a problem confusing gender. So
yeah, I mean, and it had really, when I started doing that character, it had nothing to do with the present day issue of transgender and identity and pronouns. It just was funny to hear some guy screw it up. And the backstory on Frank was that he was, he talked a little bit. My father talked like this. Philip, why don't you take that out? It's garbage. It's beginning to stink. That kind of thing. So it was just, I don't know how we stumbled on it. He's like, my wife, he's a great woman. And it made me laugh, So we started doing that. And then, as the identity and the pronoun thing began to become a newsworthy issue, I decided to just have them start calling everybody it.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want anybody to get thinking we're riffing on that or ripping on people. So he's just, my wife, I met it when we were very young, but it was the most beautiful woman I ever saw. And that worked too. So it's just, that's what works. Margaret is a voice that I found immediately. I was at KVEN in Ventura, like I said. We have military bases in Ventura, and there was some guy that called the show, and he sounded like this, and he's just Mr. Hendrie, I really love your show, and I'm so grateful to have you on the air. Well, thank you very much. As soon as he hung up, I couldn't resist. I wanted to have a female call in and say that she found him sexy. And this voice just came out of me, see? So this is what's called an upper chest voice. Falsetto is this. This is Mickey Mouse, right?
Yeah.
But an upper chest voice is where we don't click into falsetto. We take our normal speaking voice and we take it all the way as high as we can. And then I affected it in a kind of a female way. And that was Margaret. She just came right out of me and she goes, Phil, that gentleman you just had on, the military man, yeah. My God, he's devastating. Do you have a number on him? I'd love to talk to him, So that became the birth of Margaret. Just, you're looking for reality wherever you can find it. So
one of my favorites. Another one I love is it's a little bit of deeper cut, but Larry Grover and his wife and his mom, Gloria.
Gloria, yeah.
You kind of had like a weird relationship with the whole mother-son thing.
Larry. It started out as a commentary. Larry was an obsessed sort of conservative guy. And I can tell you, and he was so obsessed with getting Bill Clinton out of office that he lost his wife and daughters left because he was watching CNN morning, noon, and night. That was basically the story of Larry, that he had no social life at all. All he did was consume news and get pissed off about shit, And so, and he had to move in with his mother because my wife and daughters took off. So I moved in with mother. Well, where do you live, Larry? I'm on the service porch. I have a cot. It's perfectly comfortable. And of course, the mother's like, Larry, I wish you'd get the hell out. I really, So he sort of kind of created Larry. This voice, by the way, is a voice that I heard in Vegas one day. I was walking outside the hotel. I was on my way home. I came outside the hotel and there's a guy standing there and he's, how you doing? I go, hey, great. The guy's smiling like this, I said, do you have a lucky weekend? I don't know. I made a couple of bucks on video poker. He goes, how'd you do? Terrible. I lost $20,000. Yeah, I had the most rotten week. And it cracked me up that this guy was smiling through this whole thing about what a rotten weekend he had, Yeah, no, it was terrible. It was horrifying. I think I'm going to go shoot myself. Okay, great to meet you, So that was Larry Grover that we...
one of my favorites. And then you have two that I think that I heard that are based on real life inspirations, David G. Hall and Bob Green.
Yeah, David G. Hall is my program director at KFI. And he sounds nothing like the character that I do. And he's nothing like the character on the air that I do is, hey, look, Phil, I don't know how to tell you this, but you are going to lose me my license, my job, everything, okay? Stop doing this stuff,
Yeah.
The typical ball-breaking boss. And but Dave was the complete opposite. The real David G. Hall is a guy that supported what I did and taught me a lot about methodology and promotion stuff. And he did say one thing to me. He said, "Never stop doing me as a character." So I said, "Okay." The other guy, Bob Grain, was my general manager in Miami. And he, again, was another great, he's probably the best GM I ever worked for. I've never had a general manager sit down with me and help me show prep. This guy did. And so Bob was very influential and was a great guy to work for. He really went to bat for all of us because talent can get in trouble occasionally. And it's very, very rare. It's very rare to have management back you up. But Bob backed us up all the time through lawsuits, all kinds of shit. So I just... I loved him, but I decided to kind of mimic his voice a little bit, and I turned him into a grocer, and I used his name. He didn't mind me using his name either. So I said, "Hey, I'm Bob Green. I'm a grocer, and what about it?" So that's Bob. Yeah,
definitely. No. Another one of my personal favorites. I know a lot of fans love it. Is R.C. Collins. He's been around since the late '90s. Like one of your
R.C. was developed in Miami, and I used to be able to do this voice way better. It was a Rocky the Squirrel. You're too young probably, but do you remember Rocky and Bullwinkle?
I do. I was very young, but I do remember Rocky and Bullwinkle.
Yeah. Well, that voice that he had, Bullwinkle, it was way up there,
Yeah.
So when I first started doing RC, he like almost a Rocky the Squirrel voice. Well, let me tell you something, Mr. Hendrie. I think that I'm going to join the military and then I'm going to come out of the cave with bin Laden's head. Then you'll see, And he was based on, I don't know, when I was a kid growing up, there was always one punky little kid that wanted to hang around with you. Like, you might be, you're 11 or 12 or 13, and here comes this little kid that's like 8 or 9. Yeah, what do you guys think you're going to do? We're playing baseball, so why don't you piss off? Yeah, why don't you try to make me? That kind of stuff. Yeah. So, that was RC. He was just a little smart-ass kid on the street that we turned into this dude that had serious opinions about all kinds of shit, and that he was going to join the military, and then he was going to kick everybody's ass, and But we also had him with a kidney problem. We sort of gave him this sort of tragic side note to his life that we all kind of felt sorry for him. And I think he lived with his mother, who was an alcoholic, and his father had left and gone up north. But that was RC. It was based on me originally doing the Rocky the Squirrel voice. And thought, no, this voice is too good. I can't waste it on that. I have to do something with it. So,
that was one of my personal favorites. Definitely. And then another one, I love all your characters, honestly, but another one I really loved is Jeff Dowder, how he plays drums for Dark Horse. What do you use for the drum sound? It's kind of just like a pencil or something?
Yeah, pencil. Yeah. Just a pencil on the desk, And it turns out that Jeff is just a crap drummer. Yeah. Although maybe he can't, the pencil thing. I don't know, Mr. Henry. I mean, the pencil thing. And Jeff is like a lot of guys I grew up with. He's specifically based on one friend of mine who was a very, very intelligent guy, a guy who had a degree in anthropology, went to Cal State LA. But he talked like this, hey, Phil, do you want to, blast up? I mean, I got a bag of weed, man, this kind of stuff, And so Jeff was like that too, is very much a dude that was kind of sunbaked from the beach, and he's kind of I would say sort of a kind of a California character, that spans generations, let's say. But I had him become a drummer for Dark Horse because I thought the whole super serious prog rock mentality thing was a little funny. Right. So he's like, yeah, our new album's called Darkness at Sunrise, Mr. Hendrie. What are you laughing at, Mr. Hendrie? Darkness at Sunrise. Yeah, that's right. It's prog, okay? 1, 2, and this is how we sound on stage. 1, 2, 3, Darkness at Sunrise, So I don't know, man. He just and then I think he had drumming camp at Mr. Pooh, which is this bar that he and his band played at.
Right.
And so he was just kind of a commentary on all things beach bar related and music related as it pertained to where my head was at that time, which kind of the prog rock thing was happening big. And I guess it still is in a way. And what life at the beach, right? Some sunbaked dude who's like totally out of it. This he's never really going to have a real opinion about anything. So,
what did you use for the sound for the little bong rip when it would be taking bong rips? And
yeah, it was a recorded bong rip. It was like, yeah, I don't know where the guys got it. I think my producer found it but literally you hear the bubbling bong and,
Yeah.
maybe they did it themselves. Maybe they were smoking one night and they did it. But yeah, that was in a production device that we had called a 360. I could just bring up these sound effects by just pushing buttons. It was really pretty cool. Yeah.
Cool. And then just since we're in Redondo Beach, I loved Chris Norton, the adult film star. He's from Redondo Beach. He kind of is cousins with Jeff Dowder.
Yeah. Yes, my cousin. And this character came about when I heard a guy in Orlando, Florida, back in the 70s. He was a weekend host. And I'm listening to this cat one afternoon. He's like, yeah, good afternoon. My name is Tom. And this is WRJ Orlando. And I just, the voice was killing me, man. So I just took that guy's voice and I did a thing with the S's where I made it just said, or X's. The X turned into an S.
Yeah.
and I got that from a band that I saw on TV one day talking about cess appeal, And so I went, yeah. So I just had this dude say, yeah, I'm very sussy. And I thought it would be funny to make him kind of self-effacing. Like, in other words, he's kind of humble. I don't want to talk, Mr. Hendrie, but I do have a great deal of cess energy, and women do, come at me with the cess. And it would never fail, man. Every woman that ever called the show would say, you know something? You are a disgusting pig. And he'd say, oh, so right there, you're giving it away that you really want me. So you can never defeat this guy's bullshit. So,
and then one that always cracked me up was Harvey Wyman, but not just the character, but also just the sound of his choking on his phlegm and his problems. That always cracks me up.
I don't know where I got Harvey Wyman. Harvey Wyman was just WW2 guy, because when I was growing up, we had on my street, there was World War II and Korea War veterans up and down the street. All these dudes that were they were all nice guys, but they're all just, let me just tell you kids something. You just walked into my strawberry patch. Okay. So this is where don't come here anymore. These guys were always protecting their lawns and shit. Harvey's voice, though, I have a hard time pinning where he came from, other than to say he was a World War. I was in the South Pacific, Phil, and you know what that was, right? He was always like, it was a lot like my father, who was a veteran of Europe, and he's like, the Japanese? Yeah, there you go, the Japanese. Yeah, okay. So you know what that's about, right? Like, no, I don't know what it's about, man. And everything there was, and but then he came back, and I became an attorney, and I've just got a little block of phlegm there, And he was kind of a product of the guys in those days were super lib. Marine Corps, just came out of the Pacific. They worked for the ACLU, and then they went off into private practice. And I don't know, Harvey was just a lawyer guy that we could draw upon, But I don't know where I got this voice from, but I think it probably as somebody that we knew, that I knew as a kid.
Right.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to ask, because I loved your old talk show in KFI, and when you were syndicated, you would take callers and have guests on. But then, Can you talk about the evolution? Your podcast, you have now a panel where it's just you and a panel of people on and guests. So how did the evolution come about? Well,
I mean, radio is kind of doing one of these, and and in a lot of ways, I think my talk show became. It was the beginning of the end for talk radio as a real free form caller-based thing, because it took really skilled screeners, and it took some producing, and it also took a lot of live clearances. And what I mean by that is you need to have a live clearance, so there's live callers. But as my show was getting tape delayed a lot, so more and more we were doing monologues, and we were doing monologues with created characters. I thought, well, you know what? To be honest with you, it's more fun for me to just sit there and talk to myself, as people would say, than have to churn calls for 15 minutes with a monologue that's sort of realistic and sort of isn't, and has enough humor in it, but also is serious enough that you're going to pull callers. So we left radio in 2007. I had a couple of more years there, but around 2010, it just got to be too difficult to produce it remotely, which is what was happening, and then also to get live phone calls. So I said, screw it. we'll just go and do a podcast. And it started out as a 3-hour podcast. I mean, I was doing character voices for 3 hours, man. And then we went back to like 2 hours until finally we found the ideal length is about 30 minutes. And as it evolved, it was me talking to these characters in a really broad, kind of funny, sketchy way. And then gradually, as the years went by, we sort of just toned it down. And now if you listen to it, it's almost like just a conversation with absolutely absurd premises rolling through it at all times. And we change it up. I'll have a character being the host. I'll have somebody nobody's ever heard of being the host. It will do fake remotes, stuff like that. So this came about, to answer your question, Alex, as the result of necessity being the mother of invention. Talk radio was not sustaining the kind of comedy that I was doing anymore. And it was funny. All the program directors that we worked for, we still had a few of them going, I don't understand. What is he doing? What am I doing? What are you doing?
Yeah.
So we decided it would be better to just kind of produce it ourselves and launch it off the website. Yeah.
No, yeah. The podcast is, like I said, it's just as funny, if not funnier, than your radio show. I love both, but it's just as funny as.
I like doing the podcast better than I did the radio show, only because it's less pressure. The radio show is like every day you'd have to come up with a premise that you're going to get calls on, and then you could go ahead and launch into the comedy. So.
Yeah. One of the funniest things I loved, you did it some of your podcasts, but in the radio show, was when you would have times where there was guests on the phone or in your studio, and they would like travel through the phone. And then one other thing I love is when you would, either you or the characters would get beat up in studio. And like in one particular where I think you beat up Bud Dickman. But where did you come up with the idea to have the characters travel through the phone? That is just one of the most hilarious things I've ever listened to.
Well, that goes back to the days when phones were plugged into the wall. Okay. And you had a cord that attached to the phone and the phone attached to a cord to the wall. And there were cats that would say that, I'll come through the phone on you, man. So that is literally from that era. And we just never got rid of it. We just kept on saying, I'm coming through the phone. How can you come through a phone that's like, on Wi-Fi, man? It's not plugged in. The dude's going to float through the air or something and jam himself into your phone. So that was literally something that survived from the days when we had landlines that were plugged into the wall. Yeah.
Yeah. One of the funniest bits I've ever heard.
And then people get really pissed off. They say, hey, how'd you like it if I just come right through the phone? So we had guys go through the phone, and
yeah.
Hi,
definitely.
yeah.
So it's a little in your documentary, which I'll get to, but I just wanted you to tell a little bit about how your show on KFI at the time when it started in the late 90s, it really did influence a lot of Hollywood writers, actors, comedians, and then so many people have cited you as an influence that are in the industry. You were like at the forefront of all the stuff Crank Yankers and all those shows.
No, Crank Yankers was ahead of me. Jimmy Kimmel, who's a wonderful guy, created Crank Yankers in his college years, I think.
Oh, okay.
And was doing crank calls. I mean, we all kind of did crank calls. Jimmy took it to a very high level. I remember being a kid and doing these really sadistic crank calls like, hello, mommy, I'm lost. There's be a woman on the other end of the phone. Well, where are you, honey? I don't know. It's just crap like that. Jimmy actually had a conversation with him one time that didn't go too well. I said, I actually said to him, I said, you're ripping me off with Crank Yankers. Jimmy says to me, I am so disappointed in you that you'd say that, man. He says, I've been doing that since college. And he was right, for calling me on it. But I think I influenced some people in terms of their comedic, where they go for their comedy, what is funny and what isn't, I do think we influenced the trend of the pranks on YouTube.
Right.
Those very famous pranksters. I definitely think that there was major influence there. And in terms of just the freewheeling kind of comedy that we did, I mean, when I got on the air, I'd been in Miami for 3 years where we were doing that stuff all the time. Miami is a highly competitive market. Because nobody goes to Miami to do serious talk radio. Everybody's down there to party. So you had to do comedy. You had to do something funny.
Yeah.
And there were guys tearing each other's throats out up and down the dial, So when I got to LA, that kind of just no holds barred stuff we brought into the market. And I think that's what probably attracted a few people to say, well, here's a guy. I don't know what we were doing back in those days, but I've got chili. And I'll tell you right now, Mr. Henry, this burned my ass, you know. And I don't know whether it's the chili or it's whether it came out of my bowels. And, you know, this is like, what the hell are you talking about, man? So just, you know, the characters that we had and the Bobby Dooley, the Steve Bozell character, the R.C. Collins, you know, we just pushed what was acceptable, I guess, you know. But I think everybody kind of, any of the guys that people talk about, push the acceptability limits a little bit.
Right.
But you have to do it, man, because here's the thing. The station hires you to draw attention to the station. The station doesn't hire you just to sit there and just do nothing, man. The station has you there to bring fire, man, to bring lightning to the station. And when you are hired to do that, you're going to step over the line a lot. I do pride myself in one thing. I never, ever threatened the license of any station. We never had any FCC fines. We never had any of that shit because that's serious stuff. But we did get a lot of, you know, I mean, we got sued in Miami for like $10 million. And when I got to LA, I had the Secret Service showing up at the station because we had one character saying, you know, I love Ronald Reagan so much. You do? Yes, I do. I think he's a great president. There are times when I get an erection when I think of him. And I wanted to, I shouldn't say this, Mr. Andy, but I wanted to kidnap him one night and take him to a place in the hills. The Secret Service came in on that one, man, real fast, you know. So, and that's when you wind up saying, I'm sorry to a lot of people and you don't want to get fired. But so I think that will always influence people, you know.
Yeah, definitely. And so what I loved about your show is that it was comedy, but you're not a stand-up. I was laughing my ass off when I listened to you, but you don't do stand-up, but it's like satire on talk radio. But when you started doing the characters, was that your intention to like kind of subvert the system and kind of, you know, or were you just looking to make people laugh?
Well, my intention was to get attention, to draw attention to me, to the radio station, to make people go, oh, I got to listen to this guy. And the only way that I knew how to do that was by being absurd and satirizing the very medium that I was on. I mean, this was talk radio. People took it real serious. And here comes Phil Hendrie going, you know, the first character I ever did was a guy who was an Iraqi named Raj Faneen talking, and I come from Iraq, you know, and, you know, you people here in America, you don't respect Saddam Hussein. I saw toilet paper with Saddam's picture. So you wipe with my president, you know? That right away got people pissed off because we were in the middle of the build up to the Iraq war. And they're all like saying, how dare you come on here and talk about Saddam Hussein? He's torturing people. He's torturing. He didn't honor your American Express limit. That's what you're saying. No, that's not got anything. Yes, it is. You're a tourist and your American Express limit was not honored. And so you take that outrage and you build on it. You keep prodding it and poking it. So I'd like to say that I was altruistic. You know, my intention was to make people laugh and feel good about themselves, but no. Yeah, I wanted, there were certain people that were going to laugh, but the immediate thing was to piss off. And really, the people that call your show is only like less than 2% of your audience. So you are playing to the audience, you know, and you're using that 2% that call in.
Right.
So
there's a couple of controversial characters that are still funny as heck, but I wanted to kind of mention them. And if you can kind of mention a little bit about their stories, of course, first with Herb Sewell,
yes.
Father James McQuarters, and then Reverend Dave Castrini. You remember him?
Oh, yeah. Reverend Dave Castrini was based upon Pat Robertson.
Okay.
And I can tell you that, you know, what's wrong with using sex if it brings you closer to God? So we have our prayer counselors that go out to the houses. We have young men or young women. And the young women go out, they'll take their underwear off. What's wrong with that? You know, the young men go out. If you prefer a young man, you can have him and he'll pull his underwear down as you pray. So all we're saying is, Phil, that as we meet God with prayer, they're taking their underwear off slowly and the brassieres, and they're doing what? 3 guesses, pal, you know, or whatever, you know. And that was Reverend Dave Castrini, which was like, I thought, well, what's wrong with, you know, that was the premise. What's wrong with using sex to bring you closer to God? And so the other guy, Father James McQuarters, was simply a priest, he was like more or less a standard central casting Irish voice for a priest. Although I did know Irish priests when I was a kid. And a lot of them talked like this. We had Monsignor O'Keefe. And he would talk about, who do you think God is? Do you think he's a fool? No, Monsignor O'Keefe. No. Oh, bullshit. Yes, you do. And he had a habit of going, let me tell you something, Phil. Every time you go out there, you look like a fool. So I know he'd go way up and way down with his voice. But he was generally, we used him during the Catholic priest molestation period, like, I'll tell you something, Phil, all of these priests, if we had more money, we could just pay a lot of these people off. They'd be back in this, just outrageous opinions like that. And then the other guy you mentioned was Herb Sewell, yes. Herb Sewell's voice was a combination of two voices, Neil Myers on Mutual Radio and William F. Buckley, who sort of talked like this, And so Herb would talk and, Phil, I don't know what he said. I think what's wrong with me saving the life of a boy from drowning? That was a good thing to do, Herb. Yes, it was. So why can't I spend the day with him at Disneyland? Because you've been convicted of child molestation. Oh, who gives a shit? This kind of thing. So, I mean, he was an unacceptable character, but for some reason we got laughs at it. I mean, people thought he was funny. This child molester he's trying to change his ways. So I think that's what saved him. But definitely. Every year I have a meeting with a lot of the guys from Atascadero, Phil. Oh, you mean the forensic hospital? Yes. Bellhaven, Walter Bellhaven, and Randall Toomey, all the guys, we have a barbecue. That's great, It's weird, Walter Bellhaven. Yeah, Walter Bellhaven's a serial murderer. He'll never get out, Phil. Walter doesn't want to be let out because he knows within a half an hour, probably 20 people will be dead. So we just as soon have a barbecue with him and Bunny. Bunny Bellhaven's his wife, and she has a skull collection. I'll just stop there. So, that was her.
Do you remember doing the parody of called Skippy and Frank?
Yeah. That was kind of a morning show satire.
Yeah, that was very
I'm
funny.
Skippy. And I'm Frank. Yeah. Hey, show us your breasts. We want to see your breasts. How morning show guys stick your head out the window. Hey, you stick your head out the window. Why aren't you there? I think he put his head out the window as they were going through a tunnel, so it might have taken his head off. So that was Skippy and Frank.
Definitely. And then I also really loved your parody of Art Bell. And I understand Art Bell was a fan. He liked what you did. Yeah.
Art was, a rare guy, man. He didn't mind, he didn't, nothing. He kind of rolled off of him, man. And he thought it was kind of an honor, but he was a good man. I met him over at the R&R thing in Marina Del Rey. But Art was very easy to do because he had kind of a David Brinkley voice and also a couple of other voices kind of mixed into one. He was kind of a traditional radio announcer guy, but he was a lot of fun to do because there were so many kooky things you do with people that believe in outer space, And tell me, Bob, what was the latest? I saw a liquid being coming out of my toaster. That was last night. Okay, the liquid being coming out of your toaster. You think that's funny, Art? No, I believe you. You. Go ahead. Tell me more. Well, I don't know. It made me feel happy to see something living in my toaster, whatever. And then we, I think Art had on a guy. I forget the character that he had on, but we had a guy, General Johnson Jameson.
Right.
And Art, I can tell you that chili maker is a fantastic. Well, this is the human waste chili maker from Penman Enterprises. Yes, you just crap into it and it makes delicious chili. Thank you, from Penman Enterprises. So
very, very funny stuff. Tell me, you were just recently inducted in the Radio Hall of Fame. So what was that like after all these years?
It was a real honor, and you wonder these days with the radio where it is. Will there be many more inductions into the Radio Hall of Fame? But it was a real honor. And my old boss at Premier Radio, Craig Kitchen, is on the Radio Hall of Fame board. But they took votes from all over the country from professionals. And he called me up. Craig called me and he said, "You've been nominated for the Radio Hall of Fame." I said, "That's fantastic. I think that's honor enough." I said, "Because I don't have a snowball's chance in hell of getting elected to the Radio Hall of Fame. Let me tell you. Well, why would you say that, Phil? Because come on, give me a break, Craig. My show is way countercultural. Well, 2 months later, he calls me up and says, "You've been voted in, man." So I was very honored, and I did my very best to thank as many people as I could. That's what I figured when I got up to talk. If there's only one reason to get up and talk at those things, that's to thank people for how you got there. And it was in Nashville at the Omni. My girlfriend Jackie was with me, who's also a colleague from the broadcast business. And my best friend Don Olander and his wife Pam came, which I did not expect. He said, we're going to Nashville. I go, for what? For your thing, man. Great. So, we had a few pops in the bar over that one. And my agent David Katz came. It was cool, man. And I got to meet Jaime Herrin, the Spanish voice of the LA Dodgers. He got inducted in the same.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, this year. And yeah, I mean, I don't know, dude. 40 years ago when I was a disc jockey, I was the furthest thing away from being in the Radio Hall of Fame you could imagine. I didn't know what I was doing. Everything I did sucked. I hated what I did. And I was just about ready to get out of the business, in fact, and go into maybe photography, into full-time acting or something. But I gave it another shot, and there you go. So it was cool. I was very appreciative. Yeah.
Well, definitely. What I wanted to tell you is that, your podcast, many people said that it's funnier. I think it's just as funny, if not funnier, than your old radio show. And I can tell that you have a sense of freedom. There's like less tension. And I can tell, especially when you laugh, that you're just having fun and loving it. But do you ever miss your old radio days with the callers, or do you not care about that day?
Yeah, sure. I do. 'Cause I love the whole, I really miss the improvisational aspect of dealing with, the unknown. That is a caller who doesn't know they're really on stage with you. I mean, callers are on stage with you, but they think it's a straight conversation. They have no idea, they would not guess that you're actually messing with their heads, And I was very proud of that show because we did not call out to, we didn't pick up the phone and call somebody and then mess with them. Yeah. We got them to call us, which I thought was, an achievement. And right away, they've given their consent to be on the air because, you can get into real trouble if you record somebody without their permission or if you put them on the air without their permission. But when we did that, the minute they picked up the phone and called us, they were giving their consent to be put on the air. And, so like Chris, or whoever to be like, yeah, this man you're talking to right now, did you say that your sex appeal is so strong, women can't resist you? Well, that's been my experience. Well, I just want to say, I think you're disgusting, the things you're talking about and the way you talk about women. Well, I mean, you're just masking the fact that you are really attracted to me. No, I am not. I think you're disgusting. That, how can you not miss that?
Yeah.
You can take that as far as you want, man. So, but I mean, I guess it had a shelf life, man, of a few years because sooner or later, what happened was you made it more difficult for all these other guys to screen their shows because all of a sudden there's kind of every kind of goofball calling, and we kind of ripped the lid off the fact that talk radio was a phony thing anyway, man. I mean, you weren't really getting real opinion. You're just getting kind of people who want to be heard on the radio for whatever reason. So.
One of the things I really loved, and kind of, I'm not sure if you improvised it at the time. Maybe you did, maybe didn't in certain instances. But you would have, for instance, a guest on, and callers would be calling in, and then that topic, whatever, would spark another caller to call in, and it would be you as a caller, even though you had a guest on. Like for instance, I don't know if you remember the bit with Jay Santos and I think it was Lloyd Bonafide with the belt sander. The
belt sander. Yep. Yeah. Was
that improvised?
That was improvised. That was based on the DC Sniper.
Okay.
And they had said the DC Sniper was in a white van. So Jay Santos, well, we will be in Washington, D.C., Mr. Hendrie, and we will be flagging over cars, and what will you do? Well, we got to know if there's white paint underneath that. So we'll take a belt sander, very gently belt sand the back of the car. Well, that one guy calls, goes, you take a belt sander to my car? And let me tell you something, pal, you'll be eating that belt sander. So then I thought, I'll have Lloyd call in and go, hey, I'm with you, buddy. Let me tell you what. And then Lloyd took it to a step further. What we used to do to guys like you in the service? We'd grease you up like a little pig and take turns with you, Because, well, no, I'm not talking about going that far. Well, I am. So that was a fun moment in radio. Yeah.
Yeah, those were the best.
Yeah. Especially when Lloyd is there and say, hey, you know what? You're my kind of guy, pal. Here's what I do. Well, no, I don't want to do that, you know.
So moving on, I've just attended recently your one-man show in Hollywood, The Galaxy of Phil Hendrie. You did 2 nights. Tell us a little bit about the show, you know, and the characters you had on there, Jay Santos, Steve Bozell.
Yeah, we did it once. We did one night in September, and we had 3 characters. We started with I think we started with Chris Norton, went to Steve Bozell, and went to Jay Santos. Yeah.
Right.
And that's what I wanted to do, just go on stage, because I'm in this theater group, Theater West, and they were having West Fest, which was the theater members write and put on stage their creations. And so I said to Dina Maroney, who's one of the producers, Dina, I'd like to do a one-man show of these characters I do. She goes, great, you know. So I wrote Chris Norton, then we segued into Steve Bozell, who did this monologue like he's in a bar talking to these guys. And then Jay Santos is talking to me. And that was the one part of the show where I was on stage with the character going back and forth. And it worked, you know, unlike trying to do that in stand-up, it just doesn't work. But then this past March, we added one character, Bobby Dooley, at the beginning. Right. Which really, that's kind of a no-brainer. And there I am on stage doing all these effeminate, you know something, Phil, we just, and all of this stuff. And that was kind of fun to do. But it was just, here's the character here, here's the character here, and going off stage and coming back on. And we had slugs from our best of CDs that we played in between acts. So people would hear the calls and some music. And then we wrapped it up with Jay Santos. Yeah, I got to tell you something, Phil. You know, I used to listen to your show. You're nothing but an ass. You know that? And we wind up getting into a fist fight. Well, he says something to me and I punch him. And so he flips me off. Well, you were there, and then he staggers off stage, and that's the end of the show. You know, it was a lot of fun, man. It was, and I particularly liked the Q&A that they did after the show was over with people. That was cool to hear what people thought, and so yeah, I'd like to keep doing it. I'm not exactly sure where or when. I got a good audience in Miami. We got a great audience in California. I wanted to do it at the Broward Center down in Fort Lauderdale sometime during the summer, maybe, but just have to wait and see, you know. Right. See what I do with this mold at this building I have. Definitely. No. Yeah. Well, it was funny. I mean, I loved it. It was definitely a unique comedy experience. But thanks. I wanted to talk a little bit about that. You have a whole kind of separate, well, not separate, but career in, voiceover work with cartoons, Rick and Morty, Team America, or Police. I wanted to ask about King of the Hill, and if you're going to be, any update on the new version, or if you're going to be in that. No, I haven't heard anything. Are they rebooting King of the Hill? I think they were. I'm not sure. Maybe if it got put on pause, but I think they were. Yeah. But I know one of the guys died. I think so. I'm not sure. Oh, Lord. Got put on hold. Sorry to hear that. I was a utility player. I was not a regular. So they called me up for different episodes. They'd cast me in different episodes. So I would imagine if they bring me back at all on King of the Hill, that would be my role. Is, I don't know what I did. King of the Hill, I did Jewel Crawford. He was an attorney, and then Coach Sauer. That was kind of almost a Larry Grover voice there. And I did a bunch of dudes, So whenever they needed a good character, utility character, they would bring me in. So hey, it would be cool to go back to work with those guys. I love them. Johnny Hardwick. I don't know. Was Johnny the one that went? No, I think it's I think whoever played Dale Gribble. I'm not sure. Was that Johnny? Well, we'll see. Yeah. I think it was whoever played Dale Gribble. But that was great. I met Toby Huss there. I met a lot of guys. Jim Dotrieve, one of the writers, and of course Mike Judge. So yeah. Be a lot of fun to be back with those guys. And then with Futurama, I know you were on a few episodes and like the movie and stuff. Did you ever get opportunity, or would they ever consider you? Have you ever been considered for The Simpsons at all? No, but one of my castmates from F is for Families joined The Simpsons, Mo Collins. I don't know the character, but that was awesome for her. I was really, really happy for her. The Simpsons would be great. And Matt Groening, I know Matt Groening. I worked for him on Futurama, and but The Simpsons is like high level, man. That's like, woo, way up there. Well, I mean, I think you're at that level. I'm surprised you haven't already, honestly, but I don't know, man. I think Matt is a very good producer, writer. He knows exactly what his characters are about, and maybe he just hasn't found one for me yet, and God, those cats on that cast has been together for 40 years, man.
It's a world, it's the longest I think in TV history so far. So I think we're approaching 40 years. Yeah, so.
It's great. I'd be proud to be on The Simpsons,
Definitely,
I to be honest with you, I don't think he should hire me because I drink. See, and Matt, don't do it, man. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. But anyway,
so I wanted to get to the documentary because I loved it. Hendrie, I think it came out last year. It was so cool, and there's a lot of cool people in it. And I wanted to ask, since we're from Hermosa Beach, about Henry Rollins. He's like a big fan.
Oh yeah,
you know him, and kind of. So I want to know how did he approach you back in the day as a fan, or
no? Henry, I didn't know Henry was a fan until I was told by somebody. He's a cat that's real smart, man. And he gets what I do probably better than a lot of people. And he's one of those guys that says what I do now is better than the old radio show.
Yeah.
And I appreciate Henry's take because it's a really, he's an intellectual and very learned. He's a musician. He's not a comedian. So he comes at it from a different place. But if you get Henry Rollins' stamp of approval on something, I think you got to be doing something right, because that cat's hypercritical of a lot of things, obviously. And so I was very, very proud to hear that. I interviewed him for this Bobby Dooley podcast that I did as Bobby Dooley. And he was a good sport about that. So it was surprising, only insofar as he's the only guy in that doc who's not a comedian or actor. Although Henry's done some acting, but I mean as a comedian. Right. So to have him to have a cat like that who always pushed the boundaries in his music, appreciate our show was made me feel good, man.
Definitely. And then I also heard some of the old episodes from like late 90s, early 2000s, and when you were like in LA still, that a lot of the bands like Tool and like Nine Inch Nails and different bands would like listen to your show. Have any of those bands or like different celebrities or comedians ever approached you and told you they're fans?
Well, no. Jeanette Napolitano from Concrete Blonde. And I got to know, Dwight Yoakam was a fan. I got to know Dwight, a great guy. I'm spacing now, man, but I know that in the process of going out and doing, just being out in the world, you met people and it'd blow you away. Some of the people that dug you, and you'd sit there and go, well, I guess this is the town. I mean, because you go to work and then you come home and that's it. But when you find out that you have a fan like, John Carpenter, the director, came to watch our show. Matt came to watch our show. Steven Weber, who I think is a great actor from Wings, a whole bunch of stuff came.
I understand. Also, Howard Stern.
Howard.
Right?
Yeah, Howard came in and watched the show, and Howard is the guy that kind of cleared the way for all of us in a way, because before Howard, radio was very constricted and right down the middle, and you can't go there, and you can't go there, and you can't go there, and he pretty much kicked the doors open a little bit and made things possible. So yeah, it was,
definitely.
I can't remember any of the cats in the music world, and I should, but
no worries. I know that you started off as a DJ in the 70s and played music, and I know now that you kind of recently have expressed your interest in heavy metal and hip hop. Do you still listen to kind of all music, or are you listening to kind of newer stuff now? What kind of music are you listening to?
I listen to everything. When I left radio and I was producing in my own studio, so I was kind of disconnected a little bit from the hyper channels you get into the culture when you're working for a company per se. So I thought that hip hop and metal were the best way to stay connected to the culture. And in the process, I became a fan of a lot of bands and a lot of hip hop acts. And like when people were going off on Kendrick Lamar, I was like, well, that guy's great. Everybody, I always knew he was a great poet, a great artist, but on my phone, I've of everything on there, man, I probably sound like everybody when they say this. Oh, I listen to everything, but I kind of do. Most of the stuff that's on my phone, I would say, is 80s, 90s. There's some classic rock in there. And there's my favorite hip hop is in there. My favorite metal might be in there. Hell yeah, that freaking screaming band from Texas. I love those guys. Kid Ink, Kendrick Lamar. And then for the classic rock guys, I only like Led Zeppelin's first album. After that, I never listened to them. People are like, don't you like Led Zeppelin? Just their first album, man. The rest of it was shit. But I'm a huge blues fan, so I listen to Paul Butterfield, John Mayall, Sonny Boy Williamson, Charlie Musselwhite, a lot of the old Electric City blues. I'm a huge, big fan of that music. And I probably listen to that more than anything, to be honest with you.
Very cool. No, it's always cool to get perspective on music from like someone who played actual DJ in the 70s. So very cool. Just to wrap things up, I know you've done acting aside from your like voiceover work and stuff. Do you have any other additional gigs or anything you want to announce coming up?
Oh, you're kind, Alex. Not really. Just working on our little one-man show and continuing with our podcast. And we, the industry's changing, man. So a lot of stuff is not being shot in LA anymore. Some of the stuff is being shot up in Vegas. Things are being shot out in New Mexico. So right now, in terms of on camera, there's nothing to announce except the next big movie that I'm going to be in, which will probably be a sci-fi underwater adventure. I'm kidding, of course. I don't know. But if there's anybody out there writing one like that, actually, that's what I think I should do. I think I should write a damn movie or a TV show, something
Maybe
like
that's
that.
Next,
Yeah. Well, that Jason Alexander said it very famously in an interview I was listening. He said, you can't just audition for anything anymore, man. You got to walk in with the whole project done. You have to come in. Here it is, beginning to end. We did pitch an animated show for a while based upon my characters at the beach. And all of these characters would meet at this kind of Ted's of Beverly Hills restaurant and get into some adventures. I had a lot of fun writing that. We pitched it to everybody, Netflix, HBO Max, stuff like that. So,
Well, definitely, man. Hopefully, like I said, you can get some future one-man shows. They're definitely a unique comedy experience. And
it'll happen, man.
Very
It'll be
cool.
fun. Yeah.
Very cool. Well, again, people can check you out at philhendrieshow.com. Hopefully they can subscribe for a Backstage Pass. Check out your daily podcast. It comes out 3 times a week, new episodes. And some of the most hilarious stuff I've ever listened to. Your characters are iconic. And
thanks, man.
I really appreciate your time. Thank you for doing this episode.
Thanks for having me on, Alex. And I apologize again for my lateness.
No problem. Thank you.
It was a lot of fun, brother. Thanks so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for listening, everyone, and thanks again to Phil Hendrie for being my first guest. Man, what a wild conversation. Phil really does have a voice for radio. No one does what he does, and he's one of the funniest people I've ever heard. What an absolute pleasure. Hope you guys laughed as much as I did. Again, thanks for listening to the Hendrie Tapes, brought to you exclusively by Blue Beach Studios. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube and check out all of our stuff we've done online by searching Blue Beach 310. Our next episode is going to feature an acclaimed best-selling heavy metal author, writer, and all-around heavy metal expert. He's like a heavy metal historian, John Widerhorn. He wrote the book on metal. Some people call it the Bible of metal. It's called Louder Than Hell, The Definitive Oral History of Heavy Metal. He's worked with Scotty from Anthrax and musicians from bands like Megadeth, Agnostic Front, Ministry, and a bunch of others. I think he has a new project coming out as well he'll talk about. This is going to be an epic conversation if you love heavy metal music.